And if you're interested in it, just go to fireflies.ai and it'll take you right to it. And there's a free account there. So hopefully, Curtis, we can get the school can buy us some accounts for the so we can use them.
We'll look into it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Welcome to, I think this is the last one we have arranged, but there might be plenty more that we might come up with as we move on through the semester. Today we have Dr. Anthony Osborn here for us, and he's going to be talking about some of the best practices of engaging students. I did want to make just a couple announcements. You may have all received a invitation to, let me remember what it's called, Pathways to Indigenous Education for Tribal Colleges for next week. And it might seem very lengthy. It's like from 9 to 4. And I know that sounds very lengthy for a Zoom meeting. It is not completely from 9 to 4. There are lunch breaks and there's breakout sessions and everything else. The reason why it's just 9 to 4 is because I want to make sure we have the same Zoom link for Monday through for the 3 days. So just so you know, it just looks that way, so we have the same Zoom link. I want to strongly encourage the full-time faculty, all the full-time faculty, to make sure you attend that. But I do know that it is the end of our second summer session, so if you still have some course stuff to do for those who are teaching second session and you need to still work on that, I understand that. Adjunct faculty, I would love to have you all there if you can. It would be wonderful. But I also understand you all have your other work and your other life besides what you do for TOCC. But I do believe we will be recording this, so so we'll have that available as well. So with that being said, though, I just wanted to let everybody know what that invitation was about, and it looks like a great training, and that will be kind of part of our cultural training for the beginning of this fall semester. With that being said, please make sure everybody put their name in the chat box, kind of the same rules as our others. Please put your questions in the chat unless Dr. Osborn asks directly for questions, and I'll try and get to those questions. If not, we'll try and email those out afterwards. Camillus, Dr. Osborn asked Camillus if he would give the prayer, so I'm going to turn that time over to Camillus, and then the rest is up to Tony. So I'll turn the time over to Camillus, and then welcome Dr. Osborn, and thank you everybody, and thank you everyone for all you do for our students and for our Tohono community. Thank you.
And we thank the spirit that comes and invite the spirit to come in and join the meeting and be with us as always. We recognize it, and for all the things that will be bringing to the table at this meeting, and for all the things that will be taking from the table out for the future of our students, for the future of our families, for the future of our world. For all these things we pray, Amen.
Thank you so much, Camillus. I sure appreciate it.
Sure.
Everybody, let me start by saying I almost got in touch with Curtis and said I need to cancel, because a lot of what I'm going to cover today, it's basically on COVID and also course design. This was based on an article that I had shared with Curtis. And he said, hey, put something out there. And then I had the opportunity to go to our trainings. And so much of what is put out there as best practices, you're already doing. Or we have people who have been training us on how to do it. Well, I decided to not call Curtis because there is some value to this. First, that one article, I don't know how many had a chance to read it yet. That I think he sent it out to everybody, but it's about 50 pages long and it's really involved. So I thought maybe one service that I could do, because it does have a lot of good information on how to design a course. I'm not intimating to anybody that there is any need for this, but I know I learned a lot. And some of it's just basic stuff, basic consideration. So I actually put my PowerPoint together as a way to facilitate your using that program that's in that article, because that's basically what it is. And some of it's pretty basic, and some of it is like, I didn't think of that. But it's all geared towards what we need to do for COVID. So in essence, today, I'm not a great big PowerPoint guy, and I hate having more than 2 or 3 lines of words on it, but I put enough words in this that you can look at it and say, I'm going to go look at the article in that area. So hopefully, not just is this a presentation on an article, this is a tool. And that's probably the bottom line why I didn't contact Curtis, is that for a lot of us, we can use this and just go cut and paste, go look at the areas we want to look for the areas that we're working on. But be forewarned, you guys are going to say, I've learned that already. Hey, we've already talked about that, okay? Because that's what I did. Now, before I share my screen, there's actually 2 articles. There was a study, and those of you that have been involved with the research know it's pretty hard to do a study, crunch the data, and put it out there in 2 months. But that's what happened. And it's a pretty well thought of study of about a population of about 1,000, or sample size, of people who were going to college when COVID hit and they had to close down and go online. Unfortunately, the sample probably had some Native American in there under the other and Asian category, but it's primarily white, Hispanic, and Black. But even then, we can generalize some things. And when you see what I put in front of you today, you can say, yep, 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 because we experience the same things. That's the first part of this presentation. The second part is that how to design a course. Basically, it's a class. And for the areas where you maybe still need to think about or say, I never thought about doing that, it was very helpful for me. So I'm not going to read you the slides because I do believe everyone out there knows how to read. I will highlight the slides, but I'd like to have some time at the end, maybe as a culminating thing, to tie all that we've been learning together in the context of what I'm talking about here. Because this basically says, how do you go from full face-to-face to online to staying online for a while and eventually back to face-to-face. Camillus mentioned earlier today that a lot of people like this online stuff. And the students even say things about how they've maybe learned more. Now, not everyone buys this. I do. I think I have a lot better communication and know what my students are doing because I have to see their work on a regular basis. Some people, when I have them face-to-face, I just don't get to see as much of it. So I said all that to say, I am now going to share my screen. And if I can, I'm going to get it to where you don't see my face. Okay, now I'm sharing my screen. And what I need to do is do this. Come on now, come on. Hopefully you guys are now seeing suddenly online. Is that what you guys are seeing? Someone just say something.
Yeah, that's what I see.
That's great, because that's the first part that I want to do. I'm not going to dwell on a lot of this, but at the same time, there's a lot of smart people out there. If you have something that you want to say, you're not going to step on my toes, okay? With that in mind, this study basically said, let's look and see what happened, and it was a national sample. What happened when we moved from face-to-face in the middle of a semester, and what the people thought about it. Okay, and it addressed several things. It addressed how we moved there using live sessions like in Zoom. It addressed recorded lectures. I haven't done much of that, but I've done voiceovers on PowerPoints. Frequent quizzes and assessments, and you see that they're saying 67% had live sessions, 65 had recorded lectures, 64 had a lot of quizzes and assessments, and 60% had live lectures, again, probably Zoom, and only 25% said we had breakout groups, which I automatically thought, well, we were talking just recently about having to have discussion groups. So we got there without them even telling us that might be an area to be concerned with. How satisfied were they before COVID? Well, face it, you know, most college students are not always going to tell you I'm just very, very satisfied, but the survey said over half were very satisfied with what they're getting, and that went up to almost 90% when you worked in the somewhat satisfied. That you can't see it well, it didn't transfer well, but that's 9% somewhat and 3% very. Afterwards, now this was, again, amazingly so, they got this data out really quickly, but it was the last 2 months of a semester that they gathered the data. So afterwards, we had some people that says, okay, maybe I wasn't very, very satisfied, but the majority of them were still either very or somewhat. So that shows that the people in the country, although they were probably just like a lot of us, did not miss a beat. You know, now I've taken the opportunity to tell people in my other life about what TLCC does, about how they jumped up and just got the job done, because other colleges maybe aren't doing that as much right now. So that's my point, is that they looked at how people felt about it so that they could then say, what can we do about it? Now, I'm going to give you into a little bit more of the stats. Quality of the course, what was amazing, and this is why you're going to hear later about relationship. They did not blame their instructors. You know, one would think that maybe they would because they see us as the focus, but you know, they said that they were either very or somewhat satisfied. The only area where it was maybe a little low had to do with technology, among other things. And of course, we had that same problem. The comparisons that we have, they said they had trouble staying motivated. They had trouble maintaining interest, okay, while online. But at the same time, they felt that they understood more of what was expected. Now, I'm going to expect some opinions out of you guys. Why would they say that? And I have some ideas. Instructors' knowledge of their strengths and weaknesses actually improved online. And a lot of them felt the availability of help. You know, we do know that they have one-on-one at us synchronously or asynchronously, and a lot of them took advantage of it. And in my experience here, the same thing out there. So a lot of what we've been experiencing, the nation has been experiencing. That's not necessarily there to make you feel better about it, but just know we're not the Lone Ranger. And I think there's enough people out there to know that analogy. We're not alone. Technology was a big, big issue because, well, it's probably the same with our students, because they couldn't go to the restaurant, they couldn't go to the gas station, they had to use theirs at home. But most of the people who took these surveys had a pretty good internet at home. They weren't all remote. So being able to generalize a lot of this into us, maybe that's not going to happen, because we do have some very specific things out there. But it was interesting to see that, you know, things like video conferencing didn't work as well because it requires a high bandwidth. Tim's told us about that. And the connectivity, staying online, especially if it's a Zoom type class, was also an issue. So it wasn't just us, but it was probably not as widespread. Although I have to tell you, what we did, in my opinion, what we did to try to get access for our students was above and beyond. you know, that's not happening on other colleges. So kudos to us. And of course, those that are having hardware and software problems were also part of the ones that had problems with connectivity. I'm not going to go a whole lot into using the phone. I know we've talked about that, but very small percentage of this survey actually used the phone. Almost all of them were on a laptop, and about 3% were on an iPad type thing. And of course, that's not our reality. Okay, out there in the world, I mentioned that they had trouble staying focused, but the motivation to come to school was hard, because coming to school meant sit down at a computer at your house. Another thing that kind of impacted this population, but really impacted ours, was what happens when you have more than one person who needs that internet signal in that house and there's only one device. That may come up a bit more in a few minutes. But these are all things that no one expected, you know, and then they really did lose to a point, and our science and our classes with labs, as we were going through these classes for the last week, have mentioned that, you know, chemistry, biology. These people also said the fact that we didn't have a lab we can attend, it made me think, yeah, but we tried, you know, and I don't know exactly, you know, for those of us that have had to do the labs online, how successful we were, but there is just the fact that we tried. And once we try, and this is going to come out later, we can improve upon. And I've heard dialogue on that to say, well, this isn't working, what about that? So they didn't go into a lot of detail because this was a rather short article. Now, the article I'm going to get to next was actually a link in this article. Okay, here's what the study came up with. And I don't think this is going to shock a lot of people, but it was kind of gratifying to see, again, well, I was going to tell Curtis, I don't know if we need this training. Well, maybe we need it to validate and justify what we've been doing. You know, some of you say, I don't need anyone's validation, but we were already doing these things. So assignments that ask them to express how they feel, and that's usually critical thinking and problem solving. Now, a lot of us don't have it. I mean, I teach writing, so I ask the what, when, where, how, why questions. And that's how I went about doing that. Give them shorter class activities, probably a little bit easier to do asynchronously than synchronously, because I can do that by the amount of assignments and the type of assignments. Frequent quizzes and other assessments. That's really more I'm seeing as frequent checks for understanding. And that's one of the things that is a predictor of success. If we just give them one assignment a week and then they blow it, well, they're not going to have as much chance to respond. And then live sessions, although I'm teaching asynchronously, I'm going to have at least a couple live sessions so we can have more of a seminar to talk about what we're talking about. Breakout groups, you probably remember that coming up in our Zoom. They're saying, do it. Well, voila, we're already talking about it. A little more validation there, everybody. Messages to individual students, something that I do a whole lot, and I'll tell you my bias up front, and most of you who know me know this, is a relationship-oriented teaching. Can't always do it, but you need to try, especially for those who really need it. And there's a lot of people out there who are lost, that when they see that someone cares, they try. I've got them in my class right now. And then working on the group projects separately from the course meetings, that's how we can maybe get them collaborating with each other. In the meeting this morning, we talked about how can our students Zoom each other. Well, that's an initiative that they're saying that we should consider. Oops, I just did. Okay, well, we are now just about done. I just finished that. This is the last slide for this overview of the national study. So what I really got out of it and what they kind of said should be noted is personal messages from instructor was very, very important. Now you guys define what that is. The other thing is, in my other world, I'm a clinical associate professor. And that, among other things, means I'm not a tenured guy and I don't want it. But that means I'm clinical. I did it in the world before I tried to teach it. That's what they want to hear. Now, as it comes up in the next portion of this, you guys are all content experts, and your expertise is growing every day. They like hearing war stories. They like to hear application level examples so they can generalize what you've taught them at the knowledge and comprehension level into a real world thing. I had an experience once where a guy, I asked him what he did for the weekend and could he tell the class, and he was involved with butchering a cow. And he went into detail to the point that a couple of the students had to leave the class. Although that wasn't me using the example, the students got a lot out of it. And then again, students, especially adult students, those of you that have still studied, I know a lot of you guys out there have this master's in college admin. There was a class there where it said, how is an adult different than a child student? Adult wants what they know to be respected and to be accessed. When we find out what their prior learning is, give them a chance to strut a little bit. So in their assignments, activate that prior knowledge and let them show off. That's my takeaway from that. And this is a logical place to stop for anyone to now share either a comment or ask a question of me or someone else, if there's anyone out there.
Tony, Camillus has a question.
Yes, Camillus.
After studying all this and looking at this, I assume that there's going to be a lot of students who, after we go back to the face-to-face, that there will probably be some that will say, I'd rather do this, I'd rather do online. What do you think?
I agree with you totally. I've already had some of my students say that. I even took that to the point of saying, maybe I'm going to include more of the online stuff for my face-to-face folks, because this is not going to go away. There's a reality out there. I'm not saying it's a reality at TOCC, but brick and mortar colleges, the buildings we go into, don't necessarily have in my opinion, this isn't anyone's fact, have an exclusive anymore. There's too many people that are learning that we know how to teach online. Are there times I'd rather be face-to-face with my students? You betcha. But so if I have an online class, I have to find a way to do that online with the Zooming, with videos, with voiceovers on videos. So I agree with you totally. And I think especially for our non-traditional students, those that are working all day, I don't know if every class can be offered that way. I would hate to try to teach chemistry or biology. And I got a couple of PhDs out there, I think, that are living that right now without face-to-face. But I think there is definitely something out there for us to consider.
I just say that because also prior to at the college, there were students that were having a hard time buying lunch, and people that missed the bus or didn't catch a ride to school and didn't show up. And even like if you did online or people did online or were given the opportunity that if they were to get sick at home, that they would still attend class online. So I'm thinking, like that if there would be somebody that would say, I'd rather do it this way, so I don't have to, have money for lunch and stuff like that. That's what I'm thinking. So,
yeah, in some colleges, NAU, for instance, is doing what they call NAU Flex, where these poor professors have to be having a recorded Zoom meeting while they have people in face-to-face for that very reason. Some people don't want to go into a classroom right now, but NAU's offering the opportunity. So, but carrying that to the next step, all we would need is the technology in the classroom. So I mean, that's Curtis's area, not mine, but I think we've all lived with it. But I think flexibility is everything. And I know that we at TOCC are flexible because I've been seeing it and I've been doing it. So, but thank you, Camilla. Any other comments, questions?
So, Tony, Dwayne has a question in the chat box. He says, do you think the number that show more affection for online realize they don't have to put in as much work as in class?
I think it depends on the class. for me, as I said, I get more work out of them. Let me rephrase that. I see their work sooner, or I see the ones who aren't doing the work and I can follow up with them. Now, I follow the direct instruct model a lot, where I give them knowledge, I give them comprehension, and while they're getting the comprehension, I'm checking for understanding during their guided practice. Okay, that's a little harder to do in especially asynchronous or even in a synchronous one. So that allows me to do it. But I think a lot of our students, this took a little adjustment for me when I came to work at TLCC to teach. They're not very comfortable, as if anyone is, saying, I don't get this. So they'll sit there. They don't get that opportunity when I have them online because I'm in touch with them. And then they say, I just don't know how to download and all this, and we work it out. So I think it's very much dependent on the class. And I think some kids, it maybe has to do with what Camilla said. It makes their life easier. And we do have to consider social economic diversity issues. Yeah, I mean, I know that when I was teaching in public ed, I wasn't supposed to, but I snuck food into my class because people came to school hungry, and you can't learn when you're hungry. Now that was for children, we're talking about adults here, but I think it gives us some flexibility, but at the same time, there is a loss. It's harder to maintain that relationship.
I think that just to kind of chime in on here, I think that there's advantages and disadvantages to face-to-face versus online. And for one, you're sacrificing something for the other. When you're looking at online learning, you're looking at more of an active learning model on the part of the learner, where on face-to-face, you're looking at a passive learning model. When you're looking at face-to-face, you're looking at a learner who has to be there at a certain time, at a certain place, so it's fixed. Whereas online, you have to be the self-starter. And so I really think that when it comes to the face-to-face versus online, a lot of it does have to do with a preference. But we have to remember, I think when it all comes out to it, the pros and cons for each probably are a wash in a lot of ways.
And my feeling on that is flexibility is everything, and context. If we can offer a class online and one face-to-face, they've got choice. Yes, Dwayne?
Yeah, the reason I asked that question was in the last spring semester, I was being as flexible as possible because, it was a emergency kind of thing. But I found that as before, when I had papers due, they came in and they put them directly in front of me, so I saw them.
Yeah.
With afterwards, when we were online, I gave them, they still had their due dates, but I gave them up to a week to turn them in. And I found that over half of those that were still in the classes would take advantage of that, because they had extra time. That's what I meant by it's easier.
I agree with you. It's easy until they fail.
Yeah.
I'm not a big guy for giving Fs, and I failed some people because I knew I had been in touch, and there were reasons even for it. They were struggling in a lot of ways, but they weren't willing to take the help that I was offering, and there were a lot of things going on. But yeah, and it is an issue, and there's an asterisk by a lot of our classes right now. When that COVID asterisk is gone, I'm going to change how I teach online.
Yeah.
We're going to go back because they need to learn the discipline, the motivate. That's being an adult learner. So I agree with you totally. I'm right now, I'm probably a little more understanding than I should be, because I'm a wimp. But I agree with you. And like Curtis said, it depends on the situation, depends on the student. And I'm trying to learn from both, because I'm still learning so much about course design myself. And thanks again, this isn't meant to be gratuitous, Dr. Peterson, but I learned a lot this last week of just little twitches of what I needed to do, or maybe some big things that I needed to actually implement that we're going to keep doing that, because I don't think it's an either or all the time. Sometimes it's a both.
Same here. You know, I learned a lot, but you know, it seems like people are latching on to the online as a fix-all. I understand about travel issues and food issues and babysitter issues. You know, I was all for that in the second half of spring, but then I noticed that there were some that were taking advantage of it and then even pushed further because they knew I was trying to help them out get through the semester, you know, with all the uproar and everything. So that's just why I asked if maybe those numbers are skewed that way because we had to do that.
And it might be, but it also says something about that relationship thing. You know, now granted, the relationship may change once they come back to the main campus, but I plan on coming back when if Curtis invites me back, once we're face to face. But I'm still going to keep some online stuff going, because I don't think I'm doing a service to my folks if they don't realize this is a part of going to college. Now, I still have 20 slides to go through, and I don't have to go through them. But I appreciate the dialogue. Anyone else have anything? Dwayne, you still have your hand raised? Oh, I just took it down.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to go through this, and I'm going to go through it quickly. Because, again, this part here, you guys need to get out your handkerchief, because I bled and I sweated over this thing, trying to find the right, okay, maybe I didn't. But this is more of the roadmap if you want to consider some of these things, because as you know, we've got some course design experts out there in cyber world sitting with us right now. And some of those things that they've already talked about are going to be in here too. But based on that study, those people said, think about this. And this is actually what Curtis asked me to do. So get ready, here we go. I say that, and then it's not moving. So there we go. You're going to see this little box a lot, because the entire presentation talks either about designing it from the basics, enhancing your design, or for those of you that are taking, like I always think of Edison teaching his 102, and they're doing critical thinking at deepest level, optimizing, okay? And so they're saying those are the 3 steps. Now, if we're at the very beginning of writing a course, and I don't know if anyone's done that, that's not a lot of fun, you've got to start at the beginning. You've got to figure out some things from the design, and then if you want to enhance a little bit, this is never over. I've never taught one course the same in my life, because I've always learned something. So that's what this is really saying. Design is foundational. Enhancing either keeps it going or improves something, and optimizing is when you're polishing it. Okay, now here's something about design principles that my content experts out there know, but so do my course design folks. You have to start with the learning goals and objectives. You don't start with an assignment yet, because you don't even know what you're teaching. So that's usually, we're helped with that because the state usually helps us, and our curriculum committee helps us. So we say, this is where I need to start. And then you start building it, and you figure out how you're going to get to the information, how you're going to assess it, and then you figure out how you're going to teach it. And then you go back to your learning goals and say, what did I get? Now, that is an outcome, okay? The first one is an objective, the last one's an outcome. Did I get there? That's something that we probably all do, but when you're writing the course, you have to say, what am I going to expect to see? Now, rocket science? No. But a very, very important part, if you have to write a course from the beginning, and that's who I'm really talking to for the next 20 minutes. But I'm certainly going to welcome anyone else's opinion when you see this stuff. Same thing again. I'm not going to go over it again, but this is the focus of everything else is based on these principles. Backward design. Has anyone ever heard of backward design? You'd say, that's how I live my life. That's basically where you start with where you want to end up. Okay? Some people believe in it, some don't. These guys do. I've done it that way too, because I really believe in that previous slide where I say, I got to make sure I get to where I want to go. So let me start where I want to go and figure out what I need to do. Now, you're going to notice that there's going to be a lot of these. That's one reason I put this together this way. You can click on these icons. I'm going to send you my PowerPoint, whoever wants it, and access what's in that article. And they're great websites, so there's a whole lot in here that you can use to kind of refresh if there's something you want to know about. In this case, if you click on it, it shows you backward design. I did it again. Okay, instructional strategies. What is an instructional strategy? You guys at this point are hitting yourself in the head and saying, well, gee, it's what we're doing to facilitate learning. Okay? It's not tied to how we're going to do it, like the great app I can put into it. It's how does this get me to my objective? How do I use this to eventually get me to that objective? You can use the same ones in an online sometimes that you use in a face-to-face. That's probably what most of us did in March, is we took all the things that we were doing face-to-face with the instructional strategies we already had there, and we implemented them. I know what I've done since then. I thought, well, you know, I can do this better. You know, that's where I got the idea for the PowerPoint with the voiceover. If I don't have them in front of me, but then the problem that I ran into was they didn't know how to download it, open it up in PowerPoint, and then click on it if they want to hear my voice. So those kinds of lessons learned as we're coming up with our strategies, we'll probably have to keep working on. Those of you who are so oriented, and I am, if you want to see how the brain works, that neuroscience-based learning and education, there is, that's an active link, by the way, just so you can see. You click on it, it takes you to a site where you learn a little bit more about how the brain learns. Probably not something you have to know. It's kind of neat, though. All right. What's the difference between equality and equity? Yeah, I'm a special ed guy. Yeah, I'm a disability guy. It really isn't just about that. Right now, you guys are probably thinking, well, aren't they the same thing? Equal means everyone is given the same opportunity. Equity means we give them what they need to get the same opportunity. Look at those boxes. Are they all getting the same opportunity to the left for equality? Well, no, some people have a real good view, and one poor guy, me, is trying to see through the fence. Equity says, let's give what they need. Now, I'm not saying that you treat everyone like a student with a disability, but what we found out is using universal design for learning, and hopefully that's enough of a byword now that we know what it is. There's 3 basic principles that we use that have to do with what we teach, how we teach, and when we teach it. And you don't need to have a disability to learn this way. Granted, those with disabilities at our college will have accommodations, but people who have trouble with second language, for instance, I don't speak English as a first language, I speak American. You know, I'm being a little facetious there, but what we assume is a fluent English language speaker may just be conversational language, but they may have trouble with academic language. So a lot of the same things that we do, like closed captioning, help people who don't have that academic language. So when you use universal design for learning, and I have a lot of resources on this if you guys want to know more, you know, just look into it, because basically it's just common sense. Now, if you're very structured and very rigid, you probably won't want to use this. You teach the way you teach, the students learn the way you teach that way. But what I've learned is a lot of the students, if you just tweak it a little bit, you don't have to change their grading system or anything else. Although I've done things like, a guy says he doesn't know how to write a paragraph, and he's an artist. And have him draw a picture about a house, and he's got unbelievable details and examples. I said, what's this? What's this? What's this? He would say, oh, that's a cat chimney, and that's the smoke wafting up. And say, now write those words down. So we can, that's universal design for learning. So, you know, again, anyone want to talk about that? I am an advocate. But that is something that we can do, especially online, because not every student learns the same way. They may not be able to use technology like some can. Okay, I already said this. You guys know what to put in your courses. You're content experts, okay? And there are places, I gave you a few links here. I don't know how many out there haven't used things like the Khan Academy and video lectures and iTunes, but they're all out there and they're all open game. Just make sure that they meet our standards. You know, I've had people, not at TLCC, but get stuff that weren't appropriate for a public ed. But anything that will help them learn in an online setting is fair game, as long as it's appropriate. Okay, I could stop right now if you want. However, I didn't, because they, like the people at TOCC, realized part of teaching online isn't just writing the course. It's putting it out there. And guess what they're doing, what they're telling us to do, you guys? You need to put together a homepage. Does it sound familiar? Again, Curtis, another reason why I almost called you and said, I don't need to go over this. But they're saying, as part of your course design, you need to think this deep into it. It's not stopping with the lessons that you're going to teach, okay? It sets the tone. Now, I just heard stuff about this homepage that several people are working on right now. It's where we also do things like we send out a welcome message. I was sending out welcome messages before, but now we're all going to have the opportunity and the prompter to do this. So there's a few more things now. Some of you are going to start hissing and throwing tomatoes soon. That's okay, because there's some things that were brought up here that do hit foundational issues, but are very important. Like a syllabus. This is where the tomatoes come. We use them in the same way, but we're not always guaranteed they're going to read them. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but during my first day of class, I would read them my syllabus. Now, I have a lot of educational reasons for doing that. They hear it, they see it. I have sometimes had them sub-vocalize with me. They remember it better when they hear it. Well, I didn't do that the first time, and I had people coming back to me asking questions, this is going to shock you, I know, that were answered in the syllabus. So I did a voiceover, and I told them, and there's still a few that didn't do it. But so there are things that we can do online that we either did in class or maybe should have done in class. You know, we know things like interactive now. It intimidates me to think what Tim and other people are having in their syllabus. There's a picture of Tim dancing while he's talking to them and all this stuff, a little emoji or something. It's out there. I have a friend at NAU that does that. I don't. I don't even put my picture there, and you know why. But there are many multimedia options out there to include links to sites. For instance, I don't know how to use Microsoft Office, and I've got it. That's going to go into my welcome page. Here is a tutorial, and they click on it before they do anything else. I may not even open up the first week's module until I see they've done it. So, you know, that's very important in an online setting. That's something I would do face-to-face. But I have to make sure they've got it or they can't go further. Diversity and inclusion, well, you know, you guys know I wear that other hat. That's very, very important. But really, we need to talk about the hen dog here too. That's what I thought of when I saw this here. It's not just the broad definition of diversity and inclusion. It's how do we include who they are in our class. Talk to some of my students. They are tired of me asking them about their family, their history, what they think of this, their memories, and you know, their grandmother, their grandfather, the foods they eat, but they know that stuff. And that lets me access their prior knowledge, and that leads my instruction. You can still do that online. And the syllabus is where we talk about a lot of that. I warned them about it. But, you know, and that's the neat thing about reading the syllabus online in a file is you can still give your editorial comments. Course interaction, if you think back to that national survey, a lot of people were saying, I don't get to interact with my peers as much. I was a little surprised by that. I guess I shouldn't have been. But this is their culture. This is they're young, most of them are young kids, which means under 40 for you guys out there. But this is a big part of their social growth. And we got to figure out some way to make that continue on. When we started having discussions in our other presentations about discussion questions and ways to interact with each other, that's what I kind of kicked in on. Because although it's hard for a lot of my students to articulate their thoughts, they've got the thoughts, you know, but having the vocabulary, sometimes that kind of discourse gets it for them. And the fact that they brought up today, can they do it on Zoom? I'm going to figure that out because I'm going to make that a part of my class where they're going to have to discuss with each other. I don't know if they're going to be recorded and send it in to me. I'll let you smart people help me with that. But course interaction is a big piece of it. Assessments, well, I'm an assessment guy, and so that's why I put it in here. This is in that manual, by the way. This is all out of that manual. We have to make sure that our assessments aren't biased. Okay? That if I have someone who has trouble with expressive language, I need to do my best to access their knowledge in other ways. If it's not possible, it's not possible. If I need them to give me a written assignment, them telling me about it is part of the process, but it's not going to do it. So we have to be careful with the fact that we're grading what they're doing. A prime example is, I don't know if we have any math teachers out there or anyone doing math in your classes, the sciences, but when you give a word problem, are you testing their math knowledge or their reading abilities? And that's something that we need to talk about. We from the language arts side of the house, me from the disability side, that there are things that we can do. Hopefully if they have that level of reading problem, they're getting some accommodations also. Getting back to UDL, well, if they're not in disability services, you still can accommodate for them. I would love to have that discussion with anyone. But if we can test their knowledge in many different ways, when I do mine again, I'm sorry to keep coming back to me, but not everything is an expressive essay. There's things where they do multiple guess. They circle things. They do true or false. And if I notice that they seem to do okay with some things, but just have a lot of problem with something else, then we're talking. Okay, and I may not be able to give them the A they want, but I'm going to do my best to help them pass. If not, then we'll have to go to plan B. But assessment is not, granted there's formative assessment and summative. Most of mine is formative. It tells me where they're at. Anyone that loves to talk assessment, I would talk to you any day of the week. All right, Tim, take over. No, I didn't mean that. We all need to know Canvas. That's what this is telling us. There's many different learning management systems out there. I didn't know how much I didn't know until this last week. Again, thank you, Curtis. But then once we figure out how to use Canvas, we have to use the tools that are out there. Again, thank you for last week. And then it's not just us learning how, because then we have to teach the students. And I wish I could say I was the author of that idea, but that came out in some of those other trainings. It's important that we do that we're working with our students and making sure they get from knowledge to understanding to application, because that sometimes is a big trip. All right, off my soapbox. This isn't news for you guys. Get back to course design, though. When you're designing your course, you're going to have to ask yourself this question. Are there clear and explicit expectations? Where would they come from? Well, they're going to come from the assignment directions. They're going to come from doing the assignment. There's going to come from feedback they get on their assignments. They're going to come from a lot of different areas. But one of the hard things online is they don't see the shake of the head or the nod or the thumbs up. So we're going to have to learn how to not just give them clear expectations, but give them the feedback that they're online with what we want, no pun intended there. And I finally now, at the end of my summer semester, I've got my entire class trained to say, I don't get what you mean here. And I wanted to say, I know you haven't, because look at what you've been turning in. But I didn't, because it's up to them to trust me enough to tell me that. And Edison, how you've been teaching these classes in 5 weeks, I'll never know. I know that maybe you've had them in front of you, maybe that helped a little bit. But some of these courses, we're trying to cover so much that we need to make sure that communication's there and what we really want them to do. And I've had students get in touch and say, what it is you're expecting of me. And as I was doing this, I thought, well, I didn't do well in that area. But that if we can train them to ask us, that's the best feedback we can get. And we're all going to do it differently because we're different people. kind of leads into what I just said. They have to have various ways of talking to us online. If you're Zoom, great. Although maybe a lot of them won't. You know, some of them might say, "Can I talk to you after class?" And some of them may say, "Can I send you an email?" Those are all on the table. When we talked about, are we going to be online or in person? This is one of the biggest areas that I miss, is I can't jump on it right then and give them the feedback right then. And sometimes it takes me looking at their assignment and say, you missed something here. Say, no, that is an essay. That's not an outline. You missed a step. Here's what an essay looks like. And as you guys are already probably experiencing, this is a lot of work on this, guys. This is a lot of work. Being online has a lot of extra work that we don't have to do when we have them in person. I'm not begrudging it. I'm just acknowledging it. So whatever way we can communicate, and I give them 4 ways. I give them Zoom, I give them email, I give them my phone number, and I give them my text. And they take advantage of all of them. Granted, I don't have a life, so that works for me. But I cannot say that this is one of the key points of them feeling part of it and having that relationship. That's a biased, paid political announcement. But again, this program that I'm talking about for course design emphasizes this. And I did not cut and paste from that and put in everything. There's a lot more in this article. Oh no, how did I get here so fast? Oh, I didn't. This playbook, this article that I'm referring to, is just an introduction. You course design experts out there are nodding yes, yeah, it was. Some of us maybe need it. If you don't, then I appreciate you listening to me today. But I'm going to go back to this article now. Now, again, this PowerPoint of mine might help you navigate that article, although I do recommend that you read it. Put it in your bathroom. No, I didn't mean that way. But it's not exactly easy reading. You have to be interested in this stuff. COVID-19, in so many ways, has changed our world. One of the ways it's changed, as Camilla said, some people found out they like this stuff. So Curtis and the president may have some challenges about how do we offer both formats. Well, that's a bad problem to have, because that means we put more seats in seats maybe too. As that came out also, people not from here, granted, were paid for their tuition, not me, you guys, Curtis and the president and the federal government, but they're learning that there's a good secret here at TOCC. And I'm not saying that to get anyone's favor. It's something that I've learned and that I brag about because I have perspective away from TOCC. So this change maybe isn't going to be permanent, but I think it's not going to go away. And I hope it doesn't. Oops, sorry. We have to learn how right now to refocus our learners where they're at right now. And for some, it's very hard. Some of them are still doing it on their phone. I lose sleep over this, and I'm sure we all do. But if we can build on what we've been learning, and I'm just so impressed with what I've gotten over this last week. And hopefully you're all saying, yeah, we covered this, we're already working on that. That what we've been doing is consistent with all these muckety-muck experts out there saying what should be done. Okay, I know we don't have much time. Any questions or comments? I'm supposed to give you 30 seconds. 29, no. Close enough. Everybody, thank you for giving me the opportunity, because I learned a lot. Thank you for allowing me to appreciate you guys more. We're a team, and I'm hoping we can continue to do this. I'm going to stop sharing then. Curtis, I don't know if you just want me to send the PowerPoint to everybody, or if you want me to wait for people to get in touch with me.
If you just want to send it to me, then I'll make sure it's sent out to everybody.
Okay. There's certainly no pride of authorship here, so because I stole, you can steal if you want to. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Tony. That's great information, and I think it's a good way to wrap up everything we've been talking about. I do want to make one comment, and because this has been something that has come in the last week or so, is early on when we've been making these arrangements. One of the technologies that that has been requested is some cameras and audio information, guys. And so we did receive a grant where we did receive some video and audio equipment for all of you, and I'll actually share my screen for you. So these did come in, these video cameras with the remotes and good microphones on them. And they're right now, Liz is cataloging them in the library. There is enough of them for all faculty, including adjunct and full-time. And what we need is for everyone to email your address to Morningstar so that she has your address so that we can get them checked out to you. This was one of the earlier requests early in summer when everyone was like, geez, we really need some good cameras and some good microphones and audio equipment. So this is what our IT selected. They did some looking around, and I guess this is what the best is the best that the IT folks found for us. So please make sure that make sure that you email Morningstar your address, your mailing address, and then as soon as they're cataloged, the library will be contacting you, and we'll get those out to you guys so that you have those available for this fall. Rajneesh, you have your hand up.
Oh, can I pick it up from the college?
I'll have Liz from the library get a hold of you
Okay.
to work that out.
All right, that would be great. Thank you.
So yeah, that would be a Liz question. So, but once they have them cataloged and whatnot, I'll have her work that out with you.
Now this,
Don, what's that?
this thing has mic also, microphone.
Yeah, it does. It does have a mic. It's not a detachable mic, but it has a good system on that plate that you saw. So,
Okay. All right.
Don, you have your hand up.
Yes, one question, please. For the week of the 16th of August, the week before classes start, do we have a calendar for what's planned that week?
Not yet. I'm hoping to have that out on Monday. So far, from what I know, full-time faculty do have a faculty retreat on that Monday. And I am planning an education division meeting on Tuesday. But the Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I have not determined yet. I'm kind of feeling like for this year, I want to make sure you guys have plenty of planning time. So I'm not thinking we will be arranging much during Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We might have an hour or two meeting maybe on Friday. So for now, what I would do in your schedule is maybe just plan on something Monday, Tuesday, and then maybe something on that Friday. But beyond that, I just feel like you guys might need more planning time than our usual startup weeks. But I'll definitely send out something at the beginning of next week that will solidify things.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions?